Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to Essays Apps, and this is our first webinar on admissions into top business schools. And today we've got an amazing speaker with us, Sanmeet, and he is a special candidate, especially because he is an Indian male engineer. So he has been one of the most, he's come from one of the most competitive applicant pools. Then he's special because he's got admits into all 4 schools that he's applied to. But I think the best reason why he's special is because he managed to turn around a decision with Ross Business School. So that's what most of our participants are excited about as well. So Sanmeet, it's on to you. Talk to us about your story, about your admissions journey.
Okay. Hi, Kanika. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to talk about my experience, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you guys. So, I'm currently in Ann Arbor right now, and the MBA class has started about a week ago. So I've had my lectures. My classes are like 4 days into the program, and I'm already loving it so far. So, yeah, so talking about my admission journey, to be honest, the application season started for me almost 2 years ago when initially I decided I want to apply for business schools, and then I picked up a handful of schools, and then things did not work out for me last year, but then I made sure that I learned from my mistakes and make things happen for me, understand what went wrong, and then improve on those things. And eventually this year I had a few offers in my hand, unlike last year when I had almost 7 different rejections. So it just worked out for me.
Talk to us a little bit more about this. So what do you think was wrong in your application method last year?
Sure. So the one thing that I felt really did not work for me, and I think that's a mistake that most of the Indian candidates make, is applying to too many different schools without any particular focus on individual schools. You know, I assume that applying to a business school just means doing my essays and submitting my resume and just hitting the submit button online. That's it. That is so not true. There's much more to that. And just answering a few questions in the online form is not what applying to business school is about. So what I did wrong was I was literally just answering questions, assuming that it's a form there and they just want to know something about me and I should answer them as it is. And when, you know, most of the schools talk about why do I need to do an MBA from that particular school. So what I did last year was simply picked up random points from the school's website and wrote them down in the essays. It's just not the right thing to do, because frankly it just shows how little prepared I am regarding my application and knowing about the school. That's something that really felt wrong.
Yeah, I think that's one of the traps that most of us fall into, especially the first time when we are starting our admissions journey. We don't really know what to expect. So yeah, that's pretty spot on. And then you reapplied next year. So what did you do different this time?
So this time I made sure that I choose very few schools, like 2-3 schools, and with much more focus. And by focus, I mean it's really about knowing everything about the school. And frankly, there are many more resources available other than just the school's website. So what I did was I chose 3 schools, and I made sure that the primary idea that I had in my mind was that the admissions committee members who read my application, who make a decision for me, they should know me personally. To be honest, that was my target, and I made sure that I talked to as many people as possible, and with the sole intention of making a strong impression. So in this case, I ended up talking to almost 15 different students of Ross, around 7 to 8 students of Kenan Flagler, another 5 or 6 from Vanderbilt school, few of them from Tuck. So all the target schools that I had, I made sure I talked to a lot of them. and
Yeah, so you left your
taking
impression on the
them.
curriculum, on the students, and you
Yes.
left an impression on the admission committee members as well.
Yes, yes, yes. So talking to the admissions committee, and you'll be surprised to know how friendly and open to talking to us are the people in US. The current students and the admissions committee members, they are actually very, very open and interested in talking to us. And it's really about, being a part of the American culture and taking a proactive decision to talk to them, to reach out to them and ask for their advice. So that is something that is literally that's asked, that is expected out of you, and that is a resource that most of the Indian candidates just forget to use. We end
Yeah.
up just looking into the website and started filling up the form. That's not really how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, I really felt that when back in my days, when I was applying to these schools, I felt that reaching out to current students also helped me understand the school a little bit more. So not just from the application perspective, but just getting a flavor of what the students would be like, whether I would like that school or not. Did that happen with you?
Yes, yes, yes. So talking to the students was actually the very critical point, because every school will have a page on their website that talks about connecting with the current students. Those different schools call them different by different names. So I know about Ross, they call those students as admission ambassadors, and it's their responsibility to talk to future prospective applicants and help them learn about the school. And there's a reason why their name is on the website, because they chose to speak to future candidates and tell them about the school. So those people are very, very responsive, and those people are the primary resources of learning about the school. So
Yeah.
instead of going through the website, talk to those students. They are more than willing to help you, more than willing to talk to you, tell tell you why they went to that particular school and how did the whole application season work out. And you'll be surprised, no, when I connected with the Indian candidates, Indian admission ambassadors, some of them were even helpful to so much extent that I could literally ask them hints about my resume and my essay questions. I could ask them what I should be writing about in the essays, and they were able to correct me that you should not be writing so and so stories. Think about it in this angle.
So that's really amazing. You're not only just getting information from them, but you're basically using them to now help you give a very perfect application, if I can say that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the few guys with whom I developed a good relationship, I had a few calls. They actually reviewed my essays and my resume before I submit it to their school itself. You realize
Wow.
how big of an advantage that is.
Of course, because they've gotten in, they already know what ticks with the school. They already know what the school's absolute,
Yeah.
so they're helping you frame a good application. Right.
Yeah, yeah, they exactly. So if those guys help you, those guys take a look at your essays before you submit it, it's bound to be positive. It's bound because those guys have actually done it, and if they are advising you, then it's like the best resource available.
Absolutely. Yeah. So talking about Indian applicants, generally, what do you think are the typical challenges for Indian applicants or other international applicants?
So Indian applicants really have it tough compared to other international applicants because it's a very competitive pool, and specifically Indian engineers, it's just too many of us. And frankly, the biggest challenge that I felt I was facing was standing out from the crowd. So
Yeah.
it really boils down to this. Like last year, within Ross, I know that the Indian applicant pool was clearly over around seven to 800. That's almost one third of the entire applicant pool. The total applications were around 3,300 something, if I'm
Yeah.
not correct. I don't know about the exact number, but out of that, almost one third were Indian applicants.
That's about
And
it. And how
yeah,
many Indian
yeah,
applicants, how many Indian students do you have in your class now?
about 10% of the class, around 40 people.
Wow. So that's 40 out of 330 people. who get in?
No, 40 out of almost 1,000 people, around 900 people.
Yeah, sorry. Yes. So
Yeah, 3,000 applicants, out of that 1,000 being Indians. And it's really, really important to stand out of this crowd. It's just too important a factor, because they are tired of reading out similar applications from Indian applicants, and that is where standing out comes into picture, that I was connecting so well with the admissions committee members. I've been talking to them for almost 6 months. I started off early in August last year, when I simply dropped a mail to the admissions committee members saying, "Hey, I'd like to know about the school, and if possible, can we have a call?" And those guys are more than ready to help me out. They said, "Okay, fine, let's have a call." I had a few video calls, and then that admissions committee came down to India for a visit. I went ahead and met them and built a relationship. So clearly, I had an advantage because they knew me in person. The first time he read my name itself, he realized, "Oh, this guy, I know him. I'd like to read his application." So that was something that really worked for me.
But then how do you actually start these conversations?
So
So what I mean is that generally a lot of the information is available on the website. So just a very quick example on how you went with the admissions committee members. What questions did you ask them? Not to sound foolish, but to sound smart.
So basically, any subjective question about the process, they would be more than willing to answer those questions. If I simply ask them, I probably can't ask these questions over an email, but if I get a chance to speak to them, you can simply ask them, how does the admission process actually work, and what do you think works for an Indian applicant? You can freely ask these questions, like what kind of Indian applicants do you get, and any suggestions for me to differentiate myself. You can actually ask these questions, and they would be more than happy to answer that.
Of course. And then how did you use that knowledge to tailor your application?
So yeah, that's actually a very important factor that I feel. Understanding the application process, understanding what the admissions committee looks into an application. This is the knowledge that I got from them as and when I started speaking to them. So for example, within Ross, I know teamwork activities and group activities are something that's really looked in a positive way. So after about a few calls, I got this vibe that team activities are very important here. So I made sure that my application shows a lot of team skills and group skills and some kind of leadership skills. So as and when I started talking to the current students and the admissions committee members, I realized the kind of skills that this school is looking for, and then I tailored my application in that direction.
That's brilliant. So you basically tailored your essay stories to bring out qualities like team environments, working in team environments, or leadership skills.
Yes, exactly.
Very good. That's very smart.
So, before last year when I was applying, I was simply answering questions as a general student without any idea of what the school is looking for. So many of times schools ask about the most important quality in you, which you will bring to the school. So I thought maybe answering this question in a way that, I'm a very hardworking person, I'm a dedicated, honest person. Maybe this is a good answer. But then after talking to these people, I realized this is not a good answer. This is not a team quality in me. So if I say I'm an honest person, if I say I'm a hardworking person, that doesn't really benefit my team. I have to stress that I'm good at leadership. I have to stress that I'm good at strategical thinking or teamwork. These things are more valuable, and that is exactly what the admissions committee is looking for.
Yeah, the school wants to know what you will actually add to the class. How will your presence there benefit the class, their learning, etc.?
Exactly. So these are the skills that are important in the business school application. Bottom line, just think about how your classmates will benefit from you being in the school. That is what the admissions committee wants to know. And thinking it from this perspective, you will never go wrong.
Yeah. So try and understand more what is the ad format wanting. you see, and then you put your story like that. Great.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
I think previously you talked about a competitive GMAT as well. So what does that mean in particular?
Hmm. So, being an Indian candidate, GMAT is an additional competitive point for us. And the point that I'd like to mention here is that the school's average GMAT is not the average GMAT that Indians have. So, if I want to apply to a school that has a, say, average GMAT of 710, so it's a fact that I know from observation that if the school's average is 710 and if my score is 710, I am below average. I'm below par average because I am competing only with Indian candidates, and usually Indian demographics have an average GMAT of 20 or 30 points higher than the school average, at least 20 points. I would say it's a safe assumption that if a school has an average GMAT of 710, so then the average GMAT of Indian candidates will be 730. That's true because the schools need to compete with each other for rankings. That's part of their job, and a GMAT is an important number that is published by these ranking agencies. And many a times, what these schools do is they use international candidates to increase their GMAT so that they can take local American candidates with a little lower GMAT. So inherently, a 20-point excess GMAT of international candidates, specifically Indian candidates, it's almost like a assumption that it's taken for granted. So if a candidate is an Indian engineer in particular is at par with the school's average GMAT, that might not really work for that person. It's a fact, it's an observation, and sometimes people feel that I just might get lucky if I work on other areas. It's a little difficult to make up for that by just sitting close to the school average, because I as an individual is only competing with other Indian candidates, not with other candidates as a whole pool. So no matter how good I am, there will always be a guy, an Indian candidate who will have a similar profile but a higher GMAT. It's just a fact that we have to live with. So GMAT is a competitive factor for us, and we Indians have to at least have 20 points higher GMAT than the school average. So hitting that number is very important.
Yeah, I think that's a very good thing that you bring up in mind here. And while we are on this subject, I know people have questions around the GMAT and then the GPA score as well. So you've told us about the GMAT score. The GMAT score for Indian applicants tends to be a little bit higher than the school average, typically maybe 20 or 30 knots higher. What
Yes.
do you feel about GPA for Indian candidates?
GPA is actually GPA is not really comparable at times with the international candidates and local US candidates. So the school does not give that much weightage to GPA. So it's just the way it is, because okay, some of the universities like IITs or NITs, they give GPA on a 10-point scale, while other schools give a percentage, or Delhi University for that matter gives a percentage which is like much lower on an absolute scale. So if somebody is a 60% or a 70% in Delhi University, that's considered very good. But a 6-pointer out of 10 in IIT is not considered good. So those guys don't really care too much about GPA as they do about GMAT. So if a GPA is slightly on the lower side, it doesn't really matter that much.
I think that's a good point you've brought up as well, because typically the admissions committee is also comparing lots of different schools from lots of different countries, and they don't want to compare apples to oranges and make wrong assumptions. And so perhaps that's why GPA doesn't have as much importance as we might feel it does in our minds.
Yes, exactly. So GPA is something that we can't really do anything about as of now, and many students have asked me this question, that can I do anything about my GPA? Maybe I'd like to convert it to the American standards using some international conversions available. You can do that, but that doesn't really add much, because the admissions committee knows that the conversion, the GPA system across the world is very different. So it is what it is, and we have to accept it and don't really worry too much about that.
Okay. But still though, let's say somebody has a low GPA in their application. Do you think it's important to address it? And what are the red flags for GPA in the application?
So, I really feel that, okay, if your GPA is below 2 out of 4 on an absolute scale, below 50% marks, so then that's probably a red flag, even for Delhi University or even for IIT standards, as far as I know. So you might want to address those things in an optional essay, but again, it's just the way how American system works, that addressing a weakness gives an idea that you lack self-confidence. And unless it's an absolute weakness, let's say your GPA is very low, 1.5 or just 2 out of 4, that is only when you should be addressing this point. Otherwise, if your GPA is slightly lower, let's say 3 out of 4 on an absolute scale, or 2.5, 2.8 out of 4, it's better to leave it untouched and not talk about it, because it just shows your lack of confidence, and that is actually a very big factor in while applying to US schools. At no point during the application season you want to seem less confident or a bit too humble, because that's not how the American culture works. You have to be aggressive.
That's an excellent point, I think, where you're saying that, yes, everybody needs to sound confident, and if the weakness is not really that great a weakness, then we don't really need to stress it in our application.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Very counterintuitive to what some of us might think.
Because sometimes we feel that there is a weakness, and just when we are trying to justify that weakness, we actually bring attention to a weakness that might not even be that significant at all. So
Yeah,
it's very
yeah.
important to not address anything unless it's something that really stands out. Maybe I think poor GPA is the only thing that can be so messed up. Otherwise, I really don't think, because okay, if your GMAT is low, justifying that will not really help, because GMAT is something that goes into the school's average. Justifying it with an essay is like a waste of that essay, to be honest, and maybe justifying the GPA will. Yeah.
Take the time and just study for it and get a better GMAT score.
Yes, yes. That's exactly what that advice many of the students and even the admissions committee members gave me, that if your GMAT is low, it's better to spend time on it and try to increase it rather than trying to justify it, because justification just shows lack of confidence. And in American culture, if you are not strong enough in presenting yourself, if you are underconfident, you are just not, probably US is not the place for you. You have to be very, very aggressive in pitching yourself. That's true everywhere.
Sanmeet, it's been so exciting to talk to you, but I bet, almost everybody here is just dying to understand, how did you actually manage to turn around a Ross decision? What did you do so that you could turn around a drink into an acceptance?
Yeah, sure. That's actually the best part for me. So while applying to Ross, which was among the top schools that I was planning to do this year, I had a very heavy networking focus. Like starting August last year, I started connecting with people. I dropped the same networking mail to almost 15 different current students, including Indians, Americans, and even people from other nationalities like Koreans, Europeans. I've talked to many, many people. And the admissions committee in particular, I picked up one guy who was responsible for Indian candidates. I've been talking to that person for almost 6 months, had a call with him every 2-3 months, dropped him a mail every 1 month. I would update him about my progress and how things are going well for me, and I'm talking to these people. So there was a kind of a relationship that I built with that person over the course of around 6 months. And that relationship was very, very critical in my case. I've been talking to the admissions committee members and building a relationship. Okay, when they come to India, I went from Chennai to Bangalore specifically to meet that person. So it's really important. It's really not an option, because you're in India and you can't go to a school. Go and meet them when they come to India. They come because they want to meet you. And if you've been talking to that person, then instantly, as soon as I entered the room, he recognized me. And this kind of relationship was very, very important for me throughout the process. So once I submitted my application, had an interview, and I was called for a team activity for Ross, and everything went by. And then when I looked at my result, it was not what I wanted it to be. I got a rejection, and then that was a shock to me. But then because I had a good relationship with the admissions committee, I dropped them a politely email that, hey, thanks for the process, and I really enjoyed the entire application season, but I would like to have some time for you for discussion if possible. Can you give me some feedback? So then, because I knew that person personally, he responded to me, and then we had a call. And this is something that the school would not do for everybody, but they did it for me because I had that personal touch with the admissions committee. And then they they gave me a feedback on things that I can do to improve myself, maybe retake the GMAT, or focus a little more on the quant side of my application, and if possible, send a few emails to the admissions committee updating what I'm planning to do. If my application lacked a few corners or a few issues addressed, I did all that. I made sure that I take the feedback of the admissions committee very seriously. And then the admissions committee told me that, okay, you have been denied, but since we know you personally, we can still consider your case, because the actual logistics of a denied applicant or a waitlisted applicant doesn't differ. So if you follow my advice even now, there is a chance that I can talk to the head of the admissions committee for you, and it might work out for me. So obviously there was no guarantee, but he made sure that he talked to the admissions committee about me. When I followed his advice, I made sure that my application is updated and everything works out. And then after a denial, around 2 weeks later, once I had the call, I had around a month's time, and I made sure that I work on the feedback. And towards the end of a month later, towards mid-May, I got an offer after an initial rejection in March. So that really worked for me because I was in a personal touch with the admissions committee, and it just worked out. Otherwise, I had backup options as well, but still, Ross was like the best option for me.
I think this is a great story, a very inspirational story. And some of the things that I took away here are that, one, a ding actually can be turned around. So if they said, oh, sorry, we can't accept you this year because you had relationships going on with them, you actually went back, and within the ADCOM, you had enough support, so they would actually go and talk to the head of the admissions, again, have conversations for you and reevaluate their decision.
Yes. So in fact, the person I'm talking about was Mr. Johnson. He actually dropped me an email saying that he fought with the admissions committee for me. He really felt that I'm a great fit for Ross, and he tried to present my case to the committee, and then committee had some counter arguments which he told me, and then I was able to work on them. So because we had a good rapport going on, I really felt that, okay, there's a beautiful connection that I have with this person, and I am actually going to lunch with him now that I'm here in US. I'm keeping that relationship for future. So I'm meeting that person, so this really works. So it was an amazing thing.
Sanmeet, these sorts of relationships don't just happen over one day. And I have a feeling that when you talk about your networking focus, you started really early on in the process. So talk to us about, how did you start with these relationships? When did you start writing to them? How did you keep them in the loop, etc.?
So I started off in August last year, like right about this time of the year. I simply dropped an email to Mr. Johnson asking him that I'm not very sure about whether to apply in round 1 or round 2, and he's scheduled to come to India sometime in round 2, and I felt that maybe I can have a call with him before round 2, a video call very specifically, just to have a discussion with him. What's the difference between round 1 and round 2, and is there any advantage if I apply earlier? So he quickly agreed for a call, and then in sometime in September, I had a call with him, and I had a 1 hour long discussion about what's the difference between the round 1, round 2, how does the school look at the application, is my GMAT good enough, and how is the application season going on. So once I had that call, I dropped him a thank you email for sparing his time, and then later on when he came to India, then before he came, I dropped an email to him that I will be traveling to Bangalore to go and see him, and I'm looking forward to meeting him. Once I met him, I again dropped him a thank you email. So I made sure that every month at least one email goes from my side to him, just to let him know that I'm working on my application, and more specifically, he should be remembering my name at the back of his head.
Yeah,
So
so you basically did this where, I shouldn't be out of sight, out of mind. You just had to keep some interesting bits of information going on throughout.
yes, yes, yes. So the primary purpose was to make sure that my name sticks in his mind. So every month I would talk about how my application is going so well. I have attended another webinar. I've talked to XYZ number of students, and then I would take some names and really excited about it. And as I'm talking to people, I'm learning something new about the school. And he was courteous enough to reply to almost all of the mails. So they
Yeah,
would
I mean,
do that.
I think almost all US, especially the admission officers, they will always get back to
I
you,
don't have
no matter what.
Yeah,
Sorry?
yeah, yeah. No, no, nothing. So yeah, they will always get back to me because they are professional. And if you write a mail to them politely, asking them for your time or thanking them, they would definitely get back to you with a polite reply, even if it's just one line. Those guys are very busy, so even a one line from them is considered it's good that they're acknowledging it.
And you did your useful bit where you kept telling them, I'm now doing this, I'm now traveling to Bangalore, I'm now attending this webinar. So they really know that your interest level for Ross is very high, even before they've read your application, even before they've even met you in person. They just
Yeah,
know that
yeah.
you're very, very keen on Ross.
Exactly, exactly. So around the time of December, I made sure before hitting the submit button, I had another call with him. And at this point, since I've been talking to him for over 6 months, I was literally discussing the weather of the city and his life in the city and how things are. Just because we had such a good rapport going on that we were talking about other things. Towards the end only, I could actually ask him that, okay, my resume might have so and so sections. How do you suggest I do my resume? I literally asked this question in December before hitting the submit button, and he
Did he
actually
help you?
advised me.
That's great. You're getting the admissions officer to advise you on your application for that school.
Yeah, yeah, that can be done. It's exactly, that's the point I'm trying to make. It's very, very subjective in US schools. Everything is, after all, they are also humans. It's a human process. If they reject somebody, that it's not something written in stone and it can be turned around. It's just a matter of connecting with people, because like here in the US, even the placements happen by networking, and it's a skill that actually is important. So me talking to that person over the course of 6 months is again a networking skill that they think is good for a business school student. So there are, in this case, I actually give them an additional data point other than my essays and my resume. It's my networking skills that adds to what they would be evaluating while selecting a candidate. So all
Of
these
course.
things work together.
Of course, the admissions officers are also looking for people they'll get in the class who will, in the end, be able to get successful jobs or become successful entrepreneurs, so that, they can carry the school's legacy and the brand name forward.
Exactly, exactly. So it really boils down to this. Towards the end, again, Mr. Johnson specified one thing also very important, that I was not very pushy. I did not send them a mail every week. I sent him a mail every month, and I was persistent without being pushy. That was a borderline case, and he liked it. He really said that you worked hard and you did not take a rejection as a last resort, and then you went ahead and made things turn around for them. It
I
was
think that's
something
very
really
important
appreciating.
as well, because, given the amount of energy that you had spent in your application and in talking and connecting with everybody, when you got that initial rejection, you must have felt heartbroken.
Yes, yes, it was a tough decision for me, and that's when I felt that since I have this personal relationship, why not use it to at least understand, okay, even if they wouldn't have turned the decision around for me, they would have given me some valuable feedback that I could have used elsewhere in other schools as well. So
Exactly.
it
I
really
think
works.
the, I think the great resilience that you've shown here is that you've managed to control your emotions, even though you felt absolutely
Yep.
heartbroken, at least at that point. and
Yeah.
you're feeling like, oh my God, what has happened? And I can't make sense of this decision. But you still have a very logical question and you say, hey, I don't really understand why this happened. So can you please talk to me? Was that how it went?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So he gave me the exact reason over the call that so and so could be the reason why we rejected you. Otherwise, you were a good candidate and everything was fine. Because I literally got my essays and resumes done by the current students only. Initially, they gave me the advice on how I should be writing my resumes and essays. And mind you, Ifan, I can even ask for the current resume of some of the students. If I have a good reputation, it's possible. Some of them refused. One of them actually gave me his own resume that they were using in the placement team. So that was like the perfect template for doing my own resume and my essays and everything. So the amount of information that I got specifically talking to current students was very, very critical. So every aspect of my application was verified and completed by advising by with the advice of current students and the admissions committee. So somehow I knew
Multiple,
that my material was good.
yeah, so multiple current students and multiple various other members.
Yes, yes. Right now I am in touch with almost five, six second year MBA students even before I landed up in the city, and good relationships with them, talking to them, advising them, asking for their advice. So now that I have that relationship, I am using those relationships for other aspects as well. Now that the admission is done, the same students are advising me about housing, about textbooks, and the life in general in the city in my MBA program. So that relationships go a long way.
And that's great because, you've moved to a different country. You actually, when you would have moved there in Ann Arbor, you didn't know people around. And so it's good to go into a place where you feel, oh, I already know a few people and this place already feels a bit like home.
Yep, yep, exactly. So I am actually living right now in the house of one of the seniors who helped me in the application season. So it's just a matter of network. I asked them that what is a good housing option. He said, hey, I have an extra room. Why don't you join in me for until you have a temporary accommodation? Once I get a permanent one, I can move out or I can stay with the senior right now. So it's just a matter of connecting with people, and they're more than ready to help us out, specifically fellow Indians. They would love to help us out.
That's great. And so you basically get their help on all the
Yeah, everything, all the aspects of the school.
so even the case studies, all the solutions to beforehand, some of them?
I want to believe that. Let's see how it goes. I'm not yet into case studies, but futures, I guess they have already given me some books and materials, so I know my way around the school, and I feel that I'm confident I'll be able to handle it pretty well.
That's good. I think now, you're talking about a relationship where you've developed it so well that it's now become that they're kind of your mentors and they are already a little bit, they're partaking in your success.
Yep, yep, exactly.
Since they've already got you here, they're actually they will be very pleased to see you grow and to see you expand. So when you get future jobs or when you're looking for some mock interviews or some other tips and so on, they'll be very happy to help you and guide you all throughout.
Yes, yes. I've been talking to these guys for a long time now that they are coming back from their internships. They help the juniors in almost every aspect of a school. So there are a lot of things that I felt that maybe, back in my undergrad days, I realized that when I was in senior years, I felt that maybe I should have known this information earlier. I could have taken a smarter decision. So now I'm on top of everything that I need to do way ahead of time just to make sure. It's simply by asking people for advice. It really works well because people love to give advice and talk about their experience. So nobody will have a problem talking about their own experience. They love to do that, and it's like a win-win situation. You also get valuable information, and the experience itself is very good.
So getting back to the application, just very quickly, based on the feedback that a lot of current students and ADCOM members gave to you, what would you want to advise our listeners on a resume, for example? So what are 2 or 3 tips they should keep in mind while writing their resume?
I believe resume should be very crisp. It should be obviously one page, and it should be to the point. there's a style of writing a resume which I again learned from discussing it with my seniors, that it's resumes are written in action, context, result format. So whenever you talk any resume point you write, it should be written in the form of, I'll give you an example. Improved the financial model to achieve 20% higher accuracy. So the first word is improved, or worked, or led a team, or what did you do in that particular activity? Improve so and so model, and then comma, and talk about what result, what success you achieved with that activity. For example, in my case, improved the accuracy of a model by 20%, led a team that led to a revenue growth by $100,000 for the company, or did a project that was appreciated by the management. So whenever a resume is written, it has to be followed by an achievement point. What quantifiable is possible achievement was led by your activity. So that's how each and every resume is to be done, and to be done very, very plainly, one page, not much of a formatting thing, and very, very simple.
Okay, great. I think you've listed a couple of tips there. So you're saying, one, we should begin maybe all of our bullet points with an action verb. So something like improved, something like led, something like worked with, just so that the other person gets an idea upfront as to what it is I did. Then bring the context and bring the result in perspective. So if you improved the accuracy of a model by 20%, that makes it very clear for me when I read it. Rather than someone just saying, okay, improved the accuracy of the model. I don't know how much it was improved. It was 5% or 100% or 1%.
Yeah. These guys just love numbers. They just want to read numbers on the resume, to be honest.
So whatever we talk about, if it's really good to put some numbers. So rather than saying I was top of the class, let's say someone could say I was top of the class of so many students. It's just put things in perspective.
Yeah. So your achievement is quantified, that really helps. Rather than if I write a point that I worked on XYZ. So simply say created something that led to some activity, some positive change in the organization. That's a crispy way of making a point and a smart way of doing it.
Yeah. And did everything really fit into one page easily?
That's a decision you have to make. So in my case, since I knew that it's a teamwork based school, I made sure that all the team activities are on the resume, and it was a selective thing. I had to let a few things go. Now again, that reminds me of a good point. Some of the Indian candidates have this tendency to include more and more stuff, thinking that every stuff might give some positive impact, and overall it should just be a sum of all the tiny things that I put in. That's definitely not true. It's really about presentation, and you have to pick your battles. You have to pick the points that will go there, and although it may seem a little counterintuitive, but you have to leave some critical points just because there is no space. That goes with the resume, and that goes with the essays also. Sometimes you want to write that why I want to join in a business school. It's really not a good idea to throw in random points here and there. You should just pick one or maximum 2 points and build a story around it, rather than adding too many points and making it difficult for the reader to comprehend, because then it will break the flow. That goes true for resume as well, and the essay.
So a one page basically is very tough to do, but it's generally the norm in the US as well. So, and it's good. It's good to force yourself to that discipline and to trim down some of the bits, not to, do too much of information overload, but to really bring out crisp bits that are important for the AdCom to know.
Yes, exactly. It's important to, subjectively pick things that will work and leave out the things that you think may not be a best fit here. It's a decision that you have to take.
Great. Then tell us about essays. What were some of the best advice that you received about essays?
So I guess obviously we have to stick to the word limit, and the essays have to be one idea and then that idea developed. So if I'm talking about, let's say, an achievement or an event that happened in my life that makes me a good fit for the school, so you have to follow a star format. That's what they call it. situation, task, action, and result. You first explain what the situation was, how you fell into that situation, and then what was the task at hand, and what did you do about that task? How did you execute, and how did you do things differently? And then again, it has to be completed with the result of what was the outcome of your work and that you achieved. And it's always advisable in all the business schools. Again, this is something that the students only told me. Sometimes the essays will not ask you a question about why this particular school or what activity you're doing regarding specific to Ross, but it's always advisable towards the end to connect your activities, your career goals about with the target school that you're applying to. So in my case, there was no question about why do you want to do an MBA or why do you want to come to Ross. It was a question about what your personal achievement is, what your professional achievement is. But still, towards the end, I wrote a paragraph about how my achievement will help my peers at Ross. It just makes sense because that is exactly what they're looking for. So keeping the admissions committee's perspective in mind, the essays have to be done like this.
Yeah, that's touching upon your older point. So we have to think of essays not just as the prompt themselves, but think of it a little bit more strategically and try and think as to what is the admissions com really after, and am I getting that point across?
Yes, exactly. So the question may be in a crude way written very simplistically, answering the question, but keeping the admissions committee's perspective in mind. It's actually, one person should feel free to divert slightly from the question if it makes more sense to talk about the school as well. So sometimes if a school asks why an MBA, feel free to answer why an MBA from that particular school. So these are the few points that you can divert from the exact question if you know what the admissions committee is looking for. You can answer the question that the admissions committee wants to know rather than just the question being asked. So,
and that's a great example. They are not really wanting to know only why you want to do an MBA, but they are very keenly evaluating why you want to do an MBA from that particular school. Because
yes.
At the end of the day, I would imagine these are all top schools. They get lots of qualified applicants that they've kept in their waitlist category and who they really want to invite to the class. So if there are, let's say, 2 very strong applicants, they are probably more willing to give an offer letter to someone they feel will absolutely accept the offer.
Yeah, that's true. If somebody's shown enough enthusiasm like I did for Ross, I'm sure I will be. This is an additional advantage that I will have over other tied candidates with me. If they know me personally, they will definitely pick me over somebody else who is equally qualified number-wise and everything. So that enthusiasm is definitely noted and appreciated.
Yeah. What else about essay writing can you share? How did you pick up your stories?
So I think I've mentioned it before. It's really about talking in terms of teamwork activities. Okay, now another thing that I like to add here, the qualities that work for each school are also different. And like in case of Ross, I knew that the school is all about teamwork and group activities. This information came from talking to students, and those are the best sources to find the areas that will work in your essays. So talk to students, ask them. Literally, I asked many Indian candidates, Indian MBA students, of what did they write in their essays and how did it work for them, how was their experience. That literally gives me an idea of the points that I should be talking about in my essays. So most of the seniors that I talk to, I simply ask them, what did you write about in your essays and how was your experience? And after talking to almost 7 or 8 different candidates, I somehow started getting a few common points that all of them spoke about, and that gave me an idea. Okay, this is exactly the point that I should be speaking about because that has worked for so many candidates. So talking to current students is a primary way to get the points for the essays.
Exactly. I think that's very clever, figuring out what's worked in the past and then trying to get examples from our current life that will illustrate just those points.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good.
Thank you.
I think now you've touched about all the points with Ross, and we would like to just share with our applicants here that a lot of the stuff that Sanmeet talked about. Sanmeet has been very generous in sharing all that material on Essays App's website as well. And for a few days, so just basically this week, if the audience here just uses the coupon code webinar, they will get a whopping 45% discount on each of the products, which is absolutely amazing. And Sanmeet, we've talked about your emailing guide as well, right? Do you want to talk a little bit more about it? Of what we've included in that emailing guide and what the audience will actually get to see?
Yeah, sure. So over the course of the last 1 year, I have almost exchanged more than 100 emails from different school members, including admissions committee, professors, MBA dean, and current students. So what I've done is we've compiled a list of all the emails and put them in a guide. So summarize them, and that kind of information, I would, if I had this information about a year earlier, that would help me write these emails, because these emails were the starting point of building those relationships, and that have really worked for me. So the guide that we put together it's just a summary of all the emails that I've sent, exchanged almost over 100 or 150 odd emails. So that will talk about how to interact or communicate with the people in US politely and professionally, respecting their time and being humble in terms of their schedule, and then getting the time out from them, and then asking the right questions. These are the things that probably would be, these things prove critical in my case. So I've compiled all these information in an email guide, and if anybody wants to look at that, they can simply have a look at that guide and understand what kind of questions can be asked and how to professionally and politely approach these people, so that you get the right amount of and the correct information that's needed for the application.
Yeah, I think, Sanmeet, that would be absolutely helpful to a lot of the applicants here, because this is one of the key ways to stand out in front of the admissions committee, and then more importantly, just to get a lot more information, just to get a lot more feedback from the current students and from the AdCom, and basically submit a good application and increase your chances of getting accepted to the highest level.
Yes. So emailing and this relationship part is usually a largely ignored part by Indian applicants. So this is actually very important, and most of the time candidates just fill out the answers and that's about it. So this is a good starting point, and I guess now is a good time, August, September, the sooner the better. The relationship that starts developing sooner takes time to process, and that will obviously help in the long term as well.
Yeah, it doesn't sound as if, someone's just doing it at the last minute and asking all the questions and trying to get into their diaries at just the last minute. So it's important to start early. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot, Sanmeet. It's been a pleasure having you here. You really shared wonderful tips on all kinds of things about your admissions journey, about writing the good essays, about writing a great resume, about building a great relationship. So thanks a lot. I'm sure your stories have been very helpful to our applicants as well. Thank you for your time, and I wish you the very best at your time at Ross.
Great. Thanks, Kanika, for having me here. It was really a pleasure talking to future applicants, and I guess I hope it would have been helpful for future applicants. And let's see, if somebody wants to get in touch with me, feel free to drop my email and my Michigan ID or an email ID, and I would love to get back to future applicants if possible, if my time permits. Definitely.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Sanmeet. And I think our applicants here have had a wonderful value as well. We'll get back to each of these. We are actually getting some messages here. Some of the people are saying super helpful, Sanmeet. This message is from Nikita.
Great. Thanks, Nikita. I'm happy that it was helpful to you. If anybody has any questions, we can take it. Do we have time for that?
We've had some questions in the past, and I think you covered some. Nikita, do you have a question for us? Or the other participants? Gaurav, do you have some other questions? Anybody else? Sanmeet, there has been a previous question, and do you have advice for someone who's actually done an MBA in India earlier and then wants to do an MBA in the US?
Yeah, so that is very much possible, but that depends on a case-to-case basis. So I know of a few classmates in India, in Ross here, who have done their previous MBA. I know a guy who's done his MBA from MDI Gurgaon, and one other guy I think who's done his MBA from SP Jain. So it is possible, but it depends on school to school basis. So it's best if you send an email to the admissions committee if that particular school considers it in their applicant pool. I know Ross does. I know Tuck doesn't allow another MBA after a PGDM from India. So it's a very specific case.
Yeah. So Nikita is asking, how do you connect with current students? How do you?
If the audio is not working, how can I answer that?
Oh, well, I'm sure you can tell her. She's able to listen to you.
Okay, fine. So, if people are not responding, you can't do anything about it. You just have to send a polite email respecting their time and asking them if they're comfortable talking over a call or an email, and send the same email to 15 or 20 different students. Some of them are bound to not give you a reply, but most of them will. And even if the conversion of emails is, let's say, 50% of them reply, that's still a good number. So if some of the current students are not replying, it's a good idea to send it to more and more students. I'm sure some of them will reply. So it's really about a number.
Yeah, and Nikita, it's also about one of the things that is mentioned in the emailing guide, the beginning emails that you send out to people, you also start by asking really small things. So your focus at that point of time is really to be wanting them to say yes and to get back to you. So you just want to ask them very simple things. You want to make things very comfortable for them. You just want to say, hey, can I have a chat about this? Or you can probably email to me about these points. Make it really easy for them.
Always leave the choices up to them. If they want to get back to you, any time should be fine. Communicating via email and then asking them for their time is the right way to do.
Yeah. I'm sure, Sanmeet, we'll have more questions coming in later as well. And of course, we'll have the pleasure of speaking to you again. And for now, everybody, if you have questions, just drop them. We've got our emails here. I'll put the email on the slide. So you can just come to us with any of your questions and we'll be sure to get back to you with proper answers. And if you want to try any of the resources, just use the coupon code webinar to avail our special discount. Thank you again, Sanmeet, and thank you everybody for joining in. It was really nice, and we hope to have some more informative sessions very soon again. Take care. Bye.
Okay. Thanks, Erika. Nice for having me here. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, everybody.